She's just a cleaner. Get her out of my sight. The CEO's harsh decree echoes through the Grand Meridian's lavish lobby, targeting Lena Carter, a 32-year-old black night cleaner with a mysterious past. As her piano melodies soothe an autistic boy, the CEO's icy heart teeters on the brink of transformation. Could this trio's bond defy all odds in a tale of hidden courage and shocking twists? A secret so powerful it could rewrite their destinies awaits? Will love or betrayal prevail? Subscribe now to unravel this gripping saga. Hit the bell and share where you're watching from. Let's unite. What dark secret fuels Lena's strength? Does the CEO harbor a hidden regret? Dive in to uncover every electrifying moment in this must-watch journey. The Grand Meridian's lobby gleamed like a cathedral of excess, its marble floors reflecting the golden glow of a chandelier that hung like a frozen cascade of stars. At 2:17 a.m., the world outside Atlanta's glittering heart slept. But inside, Lena Carter waged her quiet war against dust and disdain. Her mop traced slow, deliberate arcs across the floor, each stroke a defiance of the shadows that clung to her life. At 32, Lena's hands were calloused, her back perpetually bowed. But her eyes, dark and deep as the night beyond the hotel's glass doors, held a fire that refused to gutter. She wore the standard-issue navy smock, its hem frayed from nights of kneeling to scrub stains left by careless wealth. The name tag pinned to her chest read Lena C. Housekeeping. But to the staff, she was the floor girl, a label spat with the kind of scorn reserved for those who toiled unseen. Tonight, the lobby was hers alone, save for the distant clink of glasses from the bar and the soft hum of jazz leaking from hidden speakers. Lena hummed along, her voice low and rich, a private rebellion against the silence that pressed against her. The piece shattered when the elevator dinged, disgorging Claire Hensley and her coterie of front desk elites. Claire, with her platinum hair pulled into a severe bun and her lips painted a predatory red, strode forward like a queen inspecting her domain. Her heels clicked a staccato rhythm, each step a reminder of her dominion over the Meridian's polished facade. Behind her, two younger receptionists, both white, both clad in crisp blazers, trailed like obedient courtiers, their laughter sharp and cutting. "Look at her go," Claire said, her voice dripping with mockery as she gestured toward Lena. The floor girl polishing her way to nowhere? The others snickered, their eyes raking over Lena's bent form. "Careful, ladies, don't slip on her dreams." Lena's grip tightened on the mop handle, her knuckles whitening. She kept her head down, her lips pressed into a thin line, but her heart thumped a furious rhythm. "Ku kui jiao lam viek, Lena," she told herself, the mantra a shield against the barbs. But the words stung, each one a needle pricking at the scars of a life spent being told she was less. She was black, she was poor, she was invisible, except when they needed someone to blame. Claire paused near the concierge desk, her gaze lingering on Lena with the cold curiosity of a cat toying with a trapped mouse. A man in a tailored suit, some VIP with a Rolex that gleamed under the chandelier, approached, his briefcase swinging. Claire's demeanor shifted instantly, her smile a practiced mask of deference. "Mr. Langley," she purred, "everything's arranged for your meeting." Then with a glance at Lena, she leaned closer to the man, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Don't let her near your suite. She's just the cleaner." The words landed like a slap. Lena's mop stilled, the water pooling around it like tears she refused to shed. She wanted to stand, to fling the mop aside and tell Claire exactly where she could shove her condescension. But the rent was due, her sister's medical bills loomed, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. So she swallowed the bile rising in her throat and resumed her work, the mop's rhythm a metronome to her restraint. From the corner of her eye, she saw Claire and her posse drift toward the bar, their laughter echoing like shattered glass. The VIP followed, his gaze sliding over Lena as if she were part of the decor. The lobby felt colder now, the chandelier's light no longer warm but harsh, exposing every crack in her resolve. She was alone again, or so she thought. "Lena, girl, you okay?" The voice was soft and familiar, cutting through the haze of her anger. Tasha Brooks, her best friend and fellow night shift warrior, emerged from the service corridor, her braids swinging as she pushed a cart of cleaning supplies. Tasha's eyes, warm and knowing, scanned Lena's face. Don't let Claire get under your skin. She's just mad because her soul's as empty as her tip jar. Lena managed a weak smile, the knot in her chest loosening slightly. Easier said than done, Tosh. She's got a knack for finding my last nerve. She leaned on her mop, the weight of the night pressing down. Sometimes I wonder why I keep doing this. Tasha snorted, tossing a rag at Lena playfully. 'Cause you're tougher than all of 'em combined. And 'cause you got that voice, Lena. Sing one of them old spirituals, make this place feel holy again. Lena chuckled, the sound rough but genuine. She opened her mouth to reply, but the sharp click of heels interrupted. Claire was back, her eyes narrowed, her presence a storm cloud in the gilded lobby. Brooks, she snapped, ignoring Lena entirely. The penthouse needs towels. Now. And you... Her gaze flicked to Lena, venomous. Stop slacking. This floor should have been done an hour ago. Tasha rolled her eyes but nodded, shooting Lena a look that said, stay strong. As Tasha vanished into the corridor, Claire stepped closer, her perfume cloying, her voice low and cruel. Don't get comfortable, floor girl. People like you don't belong in places like this. She turned to Mr. Langley, who'd reappeared, and gestured dismissively at Lena. She's nobody. Just keep her away from your things. The VIP nodded absently, already turning away. Lena's chest burned, her fingers itching to hurl the mop at Claire's retreating, but she didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she dipped the mop into the bucket, the water sloshing like her churning thoughts. Under the chandelier's unforgiving light, she worked on, her reflection in the marble a ghost of the woman she might have been. Yet in her eyes that fire still flickered, unyielding, whispering of a strength Claire could never touch. The lobby stretched vast and silent once more, but Lena's heart was loud. She didn't know it yet, but this night, this moment, was the spark of a reckoning. Under the chandelier, Lena Carter was more than a cleaner. She was a storm waiting to break. The Grand Meridian's 12th floor was a labyrinth of opulence, its corridors lined with gilt-framed mirrors and crimson carpet that muffled Lena Carter's footsteps. At 2:45 a.m., the hotel's pulse had slowed, but Lena's heart still thrummed with the sting of Claire's venom from the lobby. Her cleaning cart rattled softly as she pushed it toward the conference suites, the weight of her mop and bucket a familiar anchor. She was alone now, the silence thick, broken only by the distant hum of an air vent. Or so she thought. A sound pierced the quiet, a sharp, keening wail, like a wounded animal trapped in the walls. Lena froze, her hands tightening on the cart's handle. The cry came again, raw and desperate, from the magnolia room at the corridor's end. Her first instinct was to call security, but something in the sound, its vulnerability, its pain, pulled her forward. She abandoned the cart and hurried toward the door, her navy smock flapping against her thighs. The name tag pinned to her chest, Lena C., housekeeping, glinted faintly in the dim light. Inside the magnolia room, chaos reigned. The long mahogany table, meant for corporate titans, was a battlefield of overturned chairs and scattered papers. In the corner, a small figure crouched, rocking violently, his hands pressed to his ears. It was a boy, no older than 8, his dark hair matted with sweat, his face contorted in anguish. He slammed his head against the wall with a sickening thud, each impact a cry for help no words could carry. Lena's breath caught. She knew this kind of pain, not from textbooks, but from the years she'd spent dreaming of teaching children like him before life had forced her to trade her dreams for a mop. Hey, little one, she said softly, kneeling a few feet away, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. The boy didn't look up, his cries growing sharper, his small body trembling. Lena's mind raced. She'd seen this before, in her sister's old classroom, where she'd volunteered before dropping out of college. Autism, maybe, a meltdown. She needed to reach him, not scare him. Slowly she began to hum, the notes of "Go Down, Moses" rising from her throat, low and warm, like a lullaby from her grandmother's porch. The melody filled the room, wrapping around the boy's cries like a blanket. She signed the word safe with her hands, a gesture she'd learned long ago, her fingers tracing the shape in the air. The boy's rocking slowed, his head stilling against the wall. His eyes, wide and glassy, flicked toward her, searching. "That's it," Lena whispered, her voice weaving through the song. "You're safe, sweetheart. I'm here." She kept signing, her hands steady, her gaze locked on his. The boy's cries softened to whimpers, his hands dropping from his ears. For a moment, the room held only the sound of her voice and his ragged breaths. The door burst open, shattering the fragile peace. A man stormed in, his tailored suit rumpled, his face a mask of fury and fear. "What the hell are you doing?" he barked, his voice echoing off the walls. James Whitaker, Lena realized, recognizing the tech mogul from the guest list. His eyes, bloodshot and wild, darted from Lena to the boy. "Get away from my son!" Lena stood, her hands raised, the song dying in her throat. "I was just calming him, sir. He was hurting himself." She gestured to the boy who'd resumed rocking, though less violently now. "I didn't touch him, I swear." James crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling beside the boy. "Noah," she remembered from the registry. "Noah, it's Dad. Come on, buddy." His voice cracked, but Noah flinched at his touch, his whimpers rising again. James's shoulders sagged, his anger giving way to despair. He turned to Lena, his jaw tight. "You're not qualified for this. You're just a cleaner. Leave." The words cut, sharper than Claire's barbs, because they echoed her fears. Lena had once studied to work with kids like Noah, but that was a lifetime ago, before her sister's illness and the bills that chained her to this job. She opened her mouth to explain, but James's glare silenced her. "Go," he said, his voice low and final. She stepped back, her chest tight, but Noah's eyes found hers again, pleading. He reached out, his small hand mimicking her sign for safe. Lena's heart lurched. She wanted to stay, to tell James she knew more than he thought, but the weight of his dismissal pressed her toward the door. As she reached the threshold, she glanced back. Noah had stopped rocking entirely, his gaze still fixed on her. James crouched beside him and noticed it too, his brow furrowed, confusion replacing his anger. "Why's he calm with you?" he muttered almost to himself. Lena didn't answer. She couldn't. But the question lingered, heavy with possibility. In the corridor, she leaned against the wall, her breath shaky. Claire's silhouette appeared at the far end, her arms crossed, her eyes glinting with suspicion. "Trouble, floor girl," she called, her voice laced with malice. Lena ignored her, pushing the cart onward, the wheels squeaking in protest. Her mind was still in the Magnolia room, with Noah's searching eyes and James's reluctant question. She didn't know it yet, but that cry in the night had changed everything. Lena Carter, the invisible cleaner, had just stepped into a story far bigger than her mop and bucket. And though the weight of the world still pressed against her, that fire in her eyes burned brighter, whispering of a purpose she'd thought long lost. The Grand Meridian's grandeur felt like a cage to Lena Carter as she pushed her cleaning cart through the service corridor at 3:30 a.m. The echo of Noah's cry and James Whitaker's dismissal still clung to her, a bruise on her heart. Her hands, rough from years of scrubbing, gripped the cart's handle, but her mind replayed the boy's fragile sign for safe, a flicker of trust she hadn't earned but couldn't shake. The hotel's opulence, its chandeliers, its velvet drapes, mocked her, a reminder of her place in its hierarchy. Yet something had shifted tonight, and the air felt charged with unseen currents. In the staff break room, whispers slithered like snakes. Claire Hensley held court at a chip formica table, her platinum hair glowing under the fluorescent light, her voice a blade wrapped in silk. "She's trouble," Claire said to 2 receptionists, her eyes glinting with purpose. "That cleaner, Lena, cozying up to the Whitaker kid? She's after something. Money, maybe. You know how they are." The word hung unspoken but heavy, laced with the venom of prejudice. The receptionists nodded, their faces a mix of unease and compliance, as Claire's words wove a net of suspicion. Lena, pausing outside the door to refill her cleaning spray, caught the tail end of the conversation. Her stomach twisted, but she kept her face blank, a skill honed from years of swallowing slights. She wanted to barge in, to call Claire out for the liar she was, but the memory of Noah's searching eyes held her back. She had no proof, only her word against Claire's, and in the Grand Meridian, that was worth less than the dust she swept. The night wore on, and Claire's whispers spread like poison. By 4 a.m., Lena felt the weight of accusing stares. In the VIP elevator, a guest in a fur coat clutched her purse as Lena entered, her eyes narrowing. "This is for guests only," the woman snapped, her voice sharp with assumption. Lena stepped out, her cheeks burning, and took the service stairs, each step a reminder of her invisibility. Later in the penthouse suite, a businessman accused her of stealing his watch, his voice loud enough to draw a crowd. "I know it was you," he bellowed, though the watch was found minutes later under his jacket. The incident left Lena trembling, her job hanging by a thread, the manager's warning ringing in her ears. "One more complaint, Carter, and you're out." Tasha Brooks, Lena's anchor in the storm, caught her in the linen closet, where Lena was restocking towels to steady her shaking hands. "Claire's got it out for you," Tasha said, her braids swinging as she leaned close. "She's spreading lies faster than I can mop up her mess." Tasha's eyes sparkled with defiance. "Speaking of, I might have accidentally spilled some floor wax near her desk. Slippery, that one." Lena managed a laugh, the sound brittle but real. "You're going to get us both fired, Tosh." But Tasha's loyalty was a lifeline, and Lena clung to it, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't let Claire win, not when Noah's trust, fragile as it was, had awakened something in her she'd thought long buried. The tide shifted in the piano lounge at dawn, where the first light filtered through stained glass windows, casting jeweled patterns on the ebony grand piano. Lena, sent to dust the room, found Noah there, alone, his small hands tracing the keys without sound. His father was nowhere in sight, and Lena's heart clenched at the boy's vulnerability. She hesitated, then sat beside him, keeping her distance. "Hey, little one," she said softly. "Want to hear something pretty?" She pressed a key, the note ringing clear, and began to play a simple folk tune, Shenandoah, its melody rolling like a river. Noah's eyes widened, his fingers twitching as if to join her. He didn't speak, but his body leaned toward the music, his usual rigidity softening. Lena smiled, her fingers dancing over the keys, the lounge filling with a warmth that felt like home. Footsteps broke the spell. James Whitaker appeared in the doorway, his face a mix of exhaustion and surprise. He opened his mouth, likely to reprimand, but stopped as Noah tapped a key, mimicking Lena's rhythm. The boy's face lit up, a rare smile breaking through, and James's expression faltered. "He's happy," he said almost to himself, his voice thick with wonder. Lena stood, bracing for another dismissal, but James's gaze was different now, searching, not accusing. "I was wrong," he said, the words stiff, as if unpracticed. "You reached him when I couldn't. I'm sorry." He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "Could you help with him? Part-time, maybe? You're good with him." The offer stunned Lena, a crack in the wall of her world. She nodded, her throat tight, unable to trust her voice. As James led Noah away, the boy glanced back, his hand signing safe again, a silent bond forged in music. Lena's chest swelled with something dangerously close to hope, but Claire was watching from the lounge's entrance, her arms crossed, her eyes cold as winter. She'd seen the exchange and heard James's apology, and the sight of Lena's triumph was a spark to her jealousy. As Lena returned to her cart, Claire's whisper followed her, sharp and deliberate. "You're playing a dangerous game, floor girl. You won't win." Lena didn't respond, but her hands steadied on the cart, and her fire rekindled. Claire's malice was a storm, but Lena had weathered worse. In the piano lounge, under the dawn's fragile light, she'd found a purpose worth fighting for. Noah's smile, James's reluctant trust. These were her weapons now, and she would wield them with every ounce of her strength. The Grand Meridian's basement was a maze of shadows, its concrete walls damp with the sweat of a city that never slept. At 4:45 a.m., Lena Carter maneuvered her cleaning cart through the service corridor, the air heavy with the tang of bleach and machine oil. Her encounter in the piano lounge. Noah's smile, James's unexpected offer, still pulsed in her veins, a fragile hope warring with the weight of Claire's malice. She was bone-tired, her smock clinging to her skin, but the memory of Noah's signed "safe" kept her moving. The hotel's opulence faded down here, replaced by the hum of boilers and the faint crackle of exposed wiring. It was a world unseen, like Lena herself, until the night decided otherwise. A sharp pop echoed from the far end of the corridor, followed by a low, ominous hum. Lena paused, her hand tightening on the cart's handle. The air shifted, carrying the acrid bite of smoke. Her pulse quickened. She'd smelled that scent before. Her childhood apartment, a faulty heater, her sister's screams. Instinct screamed at her to run, but she pushed forward, her sneakers squeaking on the concrete. Around the corner near the electrical room, a faint orange glow flickered through the door's crack, tendrils of smoke curling like ghosts. "Fire," she whispered, the word a knife in her throat. She fumbled for her radio, her fingers slick with sweat. "This is Lena. Basement level. There's smoke near the electrical room. Get help!" The crackled response was drowned by a louder crack, the glow intensifying. The fire was alive and hungry, and the basement's tight quarters would feed it fast. Lena's mind raced. Evacuation protocols, fire exits, but a smaller, sharper fear cut through. Noah. James had mentioned he was staying on the 10th floor. If the smoke reached the vents, if Noah wandered again. She turned to run for the service stairs when a faint, rhythmic sound stopped her. Tap, tap, tap. 3 deliberate knocks, precise as a metronome, come from the storage room nearby. Lena's heart lurched. She knew that rhythm. She taught Noah to tap it on the piano keys, a signal for "I'm here." Against every rule and every shred of caution, she ran toward the sound, shoving open the storage room door. Inside, Noah Whitaker stood alone, his small frame silhouetted against shelves of linens and cleaning supplies. His eyes were wide, his hands flapping rapidly, but he wasn't panicked. He tapped the wall again, tap, 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 and pointed to the ceiling, where smoke was seeping through a vent. "Smoke," he signed, the gesture clumsy but clear, a word Lena had shown him just hours ago. Her chest tightened with awe and terror. Noah, the boy who barely spoke, was warning her. "Noah, we gotta go," she said, her voice steady despite the smoke's sting in her lungs. She reached for his hand, but he shook his head, pointing to a narrow door in the corner. A maintenance exit, half hidden behind crates. Lena hadn't known it was there. Noah, with his uncanny memory for patterns, had. "Okay, you lead," she said, trusting him, her voice a lifeline in the haze. The smoke thickened as they moved, curling around them like a predator. Noah darted forward, his small body weaving through the clutter with a purpose Lena could barely match. She coughed, her throat raw, her eyes streaming. But she kept her gaze on Noah's back, his blue pajamas a beacon in the gloom. The fire's roar grew louder, a beast clawing at the walls and the heat pressed against her skin. She stumbled, her knee slamming into a pipe, but Noah's hand grabbed hers, his grip surprisingly strong. He signed safe again, his eyes fierce with determination. They reached the maintenance door, its rusted handle cool under Lena's trembling fingers. She yanked it open, revealing a narrow stairwell leading up. Smoke followed, but the air was clearer here, and Lena gulped it greedily, her lungs burning. Noah tugged her forward, his steps sure, as if he'd mapped this path in his mind. The stairwell spiraled up, each turns a battle against the smoke that chased them. Lena's coughs grew ragged, her vision blurring, but Noah's hand in hers was an anchor, pulling her through the haze. At the ground floor, they burst into the courtyard, the night air a shock of cold against Lena's fevered skin. Sirens wailed in the distance, red lights flashing through the hotel's wrought iron gates. Noah collapsed onto the grass, his chest heaving, but he was unharmed. Lena sank beside him, coughing violently, her smock streaked with soot. She scanned his face, her hands hovering, checking for burns or bruises. "You're okay," she rasped, more to herself than to him. Noah nodded, signing safe one last time. His eyes locked on hers. "Lena!" James Whitaker's voice cut through the chaos. He ran toward them, his face pale, his suit jacket flapping. He dropped to his knees, pulling Noah into a fierce hug. but his eyes were on Lena, wide with gratitude and guilt. "You got him out," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know he'd wandered. Thank you." Lena nodded, too exhausted to speak, her throat scorched. The courtyard filled with guests and staff, their faces a blur of fear and relief. Among them, Claire Hensley stood at the edge, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. But Lena caught the flicker of unease in her eyes, a crack in her polished facade. The fire wasn't an accident. Lena felt it in her bones, and Claire's nervous glance only deepened her suspicion. As firefighters stormed the building, Lena leaned back on the grass, Noah's small hand still in hers. The Grand Meridian loomed above, its windows reflecting the fire's dying glow. She'd faced the flames and won, but the real battle was just beginning. In Noah's steady gaze, she saw her purpose reflected, a fire of her own, burning brighter than ever, ready to face whatever came next. The Grand Meridian service entrance was a world away from its gilded lobby, a concrete purgatory where Lena Carter stood at 6:30 a.m., the dawn's gray light barely piercing the haze of her exhaustion. The fire's aftermath clung to her, soot on her smock, the rasp in her throat, the memory of Noah's small hand guiding her through the smoke. She'd saved him, but the victory felt hollow under the weight of Claire Hensley's escalating malice. Lena's bones ached, but her resolve burned hotter than the flames she'd escaped. Something was wrong in this hotel, and Claire's shadow loomed large. Inside the staff locker room, whispers buzzed like flies. Claire's campaign had intensified, her lies spreading faster than the basement fire. Lena overheard a maintenance worker mutter, heard she left the kid to burn, went for the exit herself. The words were a gut punch. She slammed her locker shut, drawing stares but kept her head high. She'd faced this storm, just as she'd faced the fire, with Noah's sign safe as her talisman. Her shift ended, but trouble followed her to a small diner across from the hotel, where the scent of coffee and grease offered fleeting comfort. She sat in a corner booth, nursing a mug, when a man slid into the seat opposite her. Lionel Grant was a private investigator, his graying beard and sharp eyes giving him the air of a weary hawk. James Whitaker had hired him, he explained, to trace the source of vicious accusations flooding Child Protective Services. An anonymous email sent at 5:12 a.m. claimed Lena had abandoned Noah during the fire and accused James of neglecting his son, calling Lena a dangerous opportunist. Lena's hands tightened around her mug, the ceramic hot against her palms. "It's Claire," she said, her voice low but certain. "She's been gunning for me since I started. Now she's using Noah to get to me. And James." Lionel leaned back, his gaze assessing. "Got proof?" he asked. Lena shook her head, frustration clawing at her. "Just my word, and her hate." Lionel's expression softened, and he leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I know what it's like to be judged before you speak. Back when I was on the force, they called me that black cop, like it was a curse. Fought every day to prove I was more. You're doing the same, Lena. Don't let her break you." His words hit like a spark, igniting the fire in her chest. She nodded, her jaw set. "I won't." The conspiracy unraveled in fragments. Lionel revealed Claire had hired a former bellhop, now jobless, to pose as a witness, claiming he'd seen Lena flee the basement alone. The lie was flimsy but dangerous, designed to paint Lena as reckless and James as unfit. The email to CPS was the final blow, its language dripping with Claire's venom. The cleaner is a threat. The father is absent. The child is at risk. Lena's blood boiled, but Lionel's calm steadied her. "We're tracing the email's IP," he said. "If it's from the hotel, we've got her." Back at the Meridian, the air was thick with tension. Lena returned for an afternoon shift, her body screaming for rest, but her mind razor sharp. In the staff corridor, she caught Claire's eye, the other woman's smile a blade thinly veiled. "Heard you're in hot water, floor girl," Claire said, her voice saccharine. "Careful, or you'll drown." Lena met her gaze unflinching. "I'm a good swimmer," she shot back, her voice steady, though her heart raced. The day's chaos peaked when James found Lena in the housekeeping office, his face haggard but determined. "Lionel briefed me," he said, his voice low. I know you didn't leave Noah. I saw you bring him out, coughing, half dead yourself. I'm sorry I doubted you. His apology was raw, a crack in his guarded demeanor. He hesitated, then added, I've asked Lionel to dig deeper. If Claire's behind this, she's done. Lena nodded, gratitude warring with dread. Claire's lies threatened more than her job. They could tear Noah from James and Lena from the boy who'd begun to feel like purpose incarnate. She thought of her past, dropping out of college to care for her sister, the dream of teaching special needs kids buried under bills. Noah had rekindled that dream, and Claire's scheme was a dagger aimed at its heart. Lionel's next call came as Lena clocked out, the diner's neon sign flickering behind her. Got a lead, he said, his voice taut with excitement. The email bounced through a proxy, but the origin's a hotel computer. Front desk, night shift, Claire's station. Lena's breath caught, a surge of vindication tempered by fear. Claire was cornered, and a cornered snake was deadly. As she walked home through Atlanta's waking streets, Lena felt the weight of the fight ahead. Claire's conspiracy was unraveling, but the cost was steep. Her reputation, her peace, and her fragile bond with Noah. Yet Lionel's words echoed, don't let her break you. In the diner, under the harsh fluorescent light, Lena had found an ally in a mirror. She was more than the floor girl, more than Claire's lies. She was Lena Carter, and she'd fight for Noah, for James, for herself. The Grand Meridian loomed in her memory, its marble and gold a battlefield. Claire's malice was a fire of its own, but Lena had walked through flames before. With Lionel's evidence and James's trust, she was ready to face the storm. The conspiracy was unveiled, and Lena's fire burned brighter, a beacon in the night, unyielding and unbroken. The Grand Meridian's ballroom glittered like a jewel box, its chandeliers casting prisms across a sea of sequined gowns and tailored tuxedos. At 8 p.m., the annual gala was in full swing, a spectacle of Atlanta's elite sipping champagne and trading secrets under the guise of charity. Lena Carter stood at the edge of the room, her navy smock replaced by a borrowed black dress from Tasha, its simple cut a stark contrast to the opulence around her. She was here at James Whittaker's insistence, a guest rather than a cleaner, but the weight of Claire Hensley's conspiracy pressed against her chest like a stone. Tonight, the battle lines would be drawn, and Lena's fire was ready to blaze. The ballroom buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but Lena felt the undercurrent of scrutiny. Whispers followed her. Claire's lies about her abandoning Noah in the fire had spread, twisting her heroism into betrayal. She clutched a glass of water, her knuckles whitening, her eyes scanning the crowd. Noah was nearby, seated with James at a corner table, his small hands fidgeting with a napkin. He caught her gaze and signed safe, a gesture that steadied her racing heart. She smiled back, but the moment shattered when Claire's voice cut through the din. Ladies and gentlemen, Claire announced from the stage, her red lips curled in a predatory smile, her platinum hair gleaming under the spotlight. As the hotel's event coordinator, she commanded the room, her presence a velvet glove over an iron fist. We're here to celebrate community, but we must also protect it. Some among us don't belong, opportunists who prey on the vulnerable. Her eyes locked on Lena, sharp as a blade, and the crowd's murmurs grew. Lena's stomach churned, but she stood taller, her borrowed dress feeling like armor. Claire's words were a public execution, each syllable a nail in the coffin of Lena's reputation. James rose from his table, his jaw tight, but Claire pressed on, her voice rising. I'm speaking of Lena Carter, a cleaner who's wormed her way into the Whittaker family. She's a danger, a black opportunist exploiting a child for gain. I demand her dismissal. The room gasped, the accusation a thunderclap. Lena's face burned, her pulse roaring in her ears. Every eye turned to her, some with disgust, others with pity, but all with judgment. She wanted to shrink, to vanish into the shadows where cleaners belonged. But Noah's sign, safe, flashed in her mind. She stepped forward, her heels clicking on the polished floor, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I don't need your approval to know my worth, Claire, she said, her words carrying across the silent ballroom. I saved Noah from that fire. I'd do it again, not for money, but because he matters. The crowd stirred, some faces softening, but Claire's smile didn't waver. Bold words for a floor girl, she sneered, descending the stage to face Lena. You're nothing but a liar, using a disabled child to climb out of the gutter. The slur landed like a whip, and Lena's fists clenched, her nails biting into her palms. She was ready to retort when a small figure darted between them. Noah, his face flushed, stood before Lena, his hands moving in rapid signs. The crowd watched, transfixed, as he formed the word love, his fingers trembling but clear, directed at Lena. A collective breath caught in the room. James, now at Noah's side, looked from his son to Lena, his eyes glistening with pride and pain. He's never done that before, James said, his voice thick, loud enough for all to hear. Lena's not a danger. She's a miracle. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath, the air crackling with shifted allegiances. Claire's composure cracked, her eyes darting as if searching for an escape. Before she could speak, Lionel Grant stepped forward from the crowd, his investigator's badge glinting in the chandelier's light. Ms. Hensley, he said, his voice calm but cutting, we've traced the CPS email to your desk, and we've uncovered payments to a bellhop for false testimony. You're not protecting anyone. You're sabotaging the Whitakers to benefit their business rivals. The revelation was a bomb, splintering Claire's facade. The crowd erupted in whispers, phones emerging to capture the drama. Claire's face paled, her lips parting, but no words came. This is a mistake, she stammered, backing away. But the damage was done. James stepped beside Lena, his hand on Noah's shoulder, his voice firm. You're finished here, Claire. I'll ensure it. Lena stood rooted, her heart pounding, the weight of vindication mingling with the sting of Claire's words. She'd faced the fire, the lies, the hatred, and emerged unbroken. Noah tugged her hand, signing love again, and she knelt, her eyes level with his. I love you too, little one, she whispered, her voice cracking. The gala's lights seemed to brighten, the room no longer a cage but a stage where Lena had claimed her place. Tasha, watching from the sidelines, flashed a grin, her braids swinging as she mouthed, Told you, girl. Lionel nodded at Lena, a silent acknowledgement of their shared fight. Claire, now isolated, fled the stage, her heels echoing in the stunned silence. The gala resumed, but the air had changed. Lena was no longer invisible. She was Lena Carter, the woman who'd faced a viper and won, her fire blazing under the chandeliers, a beacon for Noah, for James, for herself. The Fulton County Courthouse loomed like a stone sentinel over Atlanta's bustling streets, its marble columns cold and unyielding under the noon sun. Inside courtroom 3B, Lena Carter stood at the witness stand, her hands clasped tightly to still their trembling. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and nervous sweat, the room a crucible where truth and lies would clash. It was 12:15 p.m., 2 weeks after the gala's seismic confrontation, and Claire Hensley's conspiracy now faced its reckoning. Lena's borrowed blazer, another loan from Tasha, felt like a shield, but her heart pounded, exposed. She was no longer just the cleaner. She was the linchpin in a battle for Noah's future and her redemption. The courtroom was packed, spectators craning for a glimpse of the drama that had gripped the city's gossip mills. James Whitaker sat in the front row, his face etched with worry, Noah beside him, fidgeting with a small fidget toy, his eyes darting to Lena. Claire sat at the defendant's table, her platinum hair dulled by the harsh fluorescent light, her expression a brittle mask of defiance. The judge, a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair, presided over the room, her gavel a silent threat. Lionel Grant, the investigator, stood ready, his folder of evidence a sword honed for justice. The CPS attorney, a wiry man with a nasal voice, began, his questions sharp and accusatory. Ms. Carter, you claim you saved Noah Whitaker during the fire, yet witnesses say you fled alone. Why should we believe a housekeeper over documented testimony? Lena's throat tightened, Claire's paid bellhop's lies echoing in her mind. She glanced at Noah, his small hand signing safe, and drew a steadying breath. Because I know what it's like to be forgotten, she said, her voice clear, resonating in the hushed room. I was with Noah in that basement choking on smoke, scared out of my mind. But he led me to safety, tapping 3 times to warn me, signing safe when we escaped. I didn't save him alone. He saved me too. Her words carried the weight of truth, each syllable a stone in the wall of her defense. The attorney faltered, his pen pausing, as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lena continued, unprompted, her gaze sweeping the room. I wanted to be a teacher to help kids like Noah, but life got in the way. My sister's illness, bills that wouldn't wait. When I found him in that conference room, crying, hurting himself, I saw the boy I dreamed of helping. I sang to him, signed to him, not for money or fame, but because he deserved to be seen. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. Claire Hensley tried to erase that, to paint me as a threat. But I'm here for Noah, and I'll keep fighting for him. The room was silent, the weight of her words settling like dust after a storm. Even the judge leaned forward, her stern facade softening. James wiped his eyes, his hand resting on Noah's shoulder. The CPS attorney shuffled his papers, his confidence fraying. But before he could regroup, Lionel took the stand, his presence commanding. Exhibit A, Lionel said, holding up a printed email, its text damning. Sent from Claire Hensley's hotel computer at 5:12 a.m., accusing Lena Carter and James Whitaker of endangering Noah. We traced the IP, confirmed by hotel logs. Exhibit B, bank records showing payments to a former employee for false testimony. He laid out the evidence with surgical precision, each document a nail in Claire's coffin. Ms. Hensley orchestrated this to discredit Mr. Whitaker, likely at the behest of his business rivals, and to destroy Ms. Carter's reputation. Claire's mask cracked, her hands twisting in her lap, her eyes darting to the exit. The judge's gavel fell, silencing the crowd's gaffes. Ms. Hensley, she said, her voice icy, these are serious allegations. Do you have a defense? Claire's attorney stammered, offering weak denials, but the evidence was ironclad. The judge dismissed the CPS claims with a single resounding ruling. The accusations against Ms. Carter and Mr. Whitaker are baseless. Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted, spectators whispering, reporters scribbling. Claire stood, her face ashen, and was escorted out, her heels clicking a defeated rhythm. Lena exhaled, her knees weak, as Tasha's cheer rang from the back row. Dr. Miriam Patel, Noah's therapist, approached Lena, her eyes apologetic. I doubted you, she said softly. I was wrong. You've done more for Noah than I ever could. Lena nodded, too drained to speak, her gaze finding Noah. He ran to her, ignoring the courtroom's decorum, and hugged her tightly, his small arms a lifeline. James followed, his voice rough with gratitude. You didn't just save him from the fire, Lena. You saved us both today. He extended a hand, but Lena pulled him into a brief, fierce hug, the gesture sealing their alliance. As the crowd dispersed, the judge called Lena to the bench. Ms. Carter, she said, her tone warm, your testimony showed rare integrity. We need voices like yours on our child welfare board. Consider it. Lena blinked, the offer a spark in the ashes of her old dreams. But she only nodded, her mind still reeling. The courthouse doors swung open, spilling Lena into the sunlight. Noah's hand was in hers, James at her side, Lionel and Tasha trailing behind. Claire's conspiracy lay in ruins, her lies exposed, her power stripped. Lena's fire had burned through the darkness, and though the scars remained, she stood taller, her purpose clear. The trial was over, but her fight, for Noah, for herself, was far from done. The Grand Meridian's garden glowed under a silver moon, its roses and magnolias weaving a tapestry of scent and shadow. At 9 p.m., 3 weeks after the trial that shattered Claire Hensley's lies, Lena Carter stood on the cobblestone path, her breath catching at the sight of Noah Whitaker chasing fireflies. His laughter, rare and bright, pierced the quiet, a melody that soothed the scars of her battles. The hotel, once a gilded cage of prejudice, felt different now, warmer, as if its marble heart had begun to beat. Lena's borrowed dress from the gala was gone, replaced by jeans and a sweater, but she carried a new weight. The judge's offer to join the Child Welfare Board, a chance to resurrect her buried dreams. The trial's echoes lingered. Claire's disgrace, the vindication of Lena's truth. But tonight was for healing. Lena's hands, still rough from years of scrubbing floors, fidgeted with a small notebook where she jotted ideas for Noah's communication exercises. Her bond with him had deepened, forged in fire and courtroom firestorms, but a quiet fear gnawed at her. Could she let herself love this boy, this family, without losing the fragile self she'd fought to reclaim? James Whitaker emerged from the hotel's terrace, his usual suit traded for a soft jacket, his face softened by the moonlight. He'd changed since the trial, his guarded edges worn down by Noah's progress and Lena's unwavering courage. Beside him stood Rebecca Lang, his mother, her silver hair pulled into a loose bun, her eyes wary but searching. Rebecca had kept her distance, skeptical of Lena's role in Noah's life, but tonight she'd come to see for herself. "Lena," Rebecca said, her voice clipped but not unkind. "James tells me you've worked wonders with Noah. I owe you an apology for doubting you." Her words were stiff, a bridge built with effort, and Lena nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you, ma'am," she said, her voice steady. "I just did what felt right." Rebecca's gaze lingered, appraising, then softened as Noah ran to Lena, his hand signing play. Lena knelt, her sweater brushing the grass, and signed back. "What game, little one?" Noah's eyes sparkled, and he tugged her toward a stone bench, where he'd arranged pebbles in a careful pattern. A circle, a star, a heart. She laughed, the sound mingling with the crickets, and began a clapping game, teaching him to match her rhythm. Noah's hands faltered but followed, his focus intense, his smile a beacon in the dark. James joined them, sitting cross-legged on the grass, his awkwardness endearing as he tried to mimic their claps. "I'm terrible at this," he admitted, his laugh rueful, but Noah giggled, signing, "Try." Lena's heart swelled, the scene a fragile dream she hadn't dared imagine. Rebecca watched from the bench, her hands clasped, her expression shifting from reserve to quiet awe. "He's never been this open," she murmured, almost to herself. "Not even with me." The moment deepened when Noah paused, his hands stilling. He looked at Lena, his eyes wide and searching, then opened his mouth. "Lena," he said, the words soft but clear, his first spoken word in years. The garden seemed to hold its breath, the moon itself pausing in reverence. Lena froze, her eyes stinging, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, Noah," she whispered, pulling him into a hug, her tears dampening his hair. He signed love, his small fingers steady, and she signed it back, her heart cracking open. James's eyes glistened, his hand reaching for Noah's shoulder, then Lena's. "You did this," he said, his voice thick. "You reached him when no one else could." Lena shook her head, her voice breaking. "He reached me, James. He showed me I could still be more." Rebecca stood, her reserve crumbling, and joined them, her hand resting lightly on Lena's arm. "You're family now," she said, the words a vow, and Lena's fear, of loving too deeply, of losing herself, began to dissolve. The night unfolded in quiet miracles. James, inspired by Noah's progress, had begun learning sign language, his fingers clumsy but earnest as he joined Lena's games. They played a makeshift rhythm game, Noah tapping pebbles while Lena hummed "Go Down, Moses," the song that had first calmed him. James tried to hum along, his off-key notes drawing Noah's laughter, a sound that felt like sunlight after a storm. Dr. Miriam Patel, Noah's therapist, arrived late, her smile warm as she observed. "You're a natural, Lena," she said. "You should be teaching this, not just doing it." The judge's offer resurfaced in Lena's mind, a spark fanned by Miriam's words. As the group moved to the terrace for lemonade, the judge herself appeared, her presence unexpected but welcome. "Ms. Carter," she said, her eyes kind, "I meant what I said about the welfare board. You have a gift, a voice for those who need it most. Will you join us?" Lena hesitated, her old doubts whispering, but Noah's hand in hers silenced them. "Yes," she said, the word a leap into a future she'd thought lost. "I will." The garden glowed brighter, the fireflies dancing like stars brought to earth. Lena sat with Noah, James, and Rebecca, their laughter weaving a new family from the ashes of old wounds. Tasha, arriving to check on her friend, grinned from the sidelines, her braids swinging as she mouthed, "Told you, girl." The Grand Meridian, once a battlefield, was now a haven, its garden a testament to love's quiet power. Lena looked at Noah, his face alight with joy, and felt her purpose solidify. She'd fought fires, lies, and her fears to stand here, surrounded by a family she'd chosen. The night was theirs, a fragile but fierce beginning, and Lena's fire burned steady, a beacon of hope under the moon's gentle watch. The Grand Meridian's lobby, once a cold cathedral of marble and disdain, thrummed with warmth under the golden glow of its chandelier. It was 7 p.m., 1 year after the trial that had unraveled Claire Hensley's lies, and Lena Carter stood at the heart of the hotel, no longer a shadow in a navy smock, but a beacon in a tailored blazer. The air carried the soft jazz of a live quartet, mingling with the laughter of community members gathered for the launch of Lena's inclusive education program. Noah Whitaker, now 9, darted through the crowd, his hands signing happy with a grin that lit the room. Lena's heart swelled. Her journey from floor girl to advocate was a melody she'd never dared dream of, now played in full. The lobby's transformation mirrored her own. Gone were the days of Claire's venomous whispers. The Meridian had become a partner in Lena's mission, its site map hosting workshops for children like Noah. Lena had accepted the judge's offer, joining the Child Welfare Board, and with James Whitaker's support, she'd built a program at the local community center, blending music, sign language, and sensory play to reach kids who felt unseen. Tonight was a celebration, but for Lena, it was a reckoning, a moment to stand tall in the space that had once tried to break her. Noah tugged her hand, pulling her toward the ebony grand piano at the lobby center. His eyes sparkled, his progress a quiet miracle. He spoke short sentences now, his voice a soft echo of the boy who'd first said Lena in the garden. "Play," he signed, his fingers deft, and Lena laughed, the sound rich and free. She sat at the bench, her fingers brushing the keys, and began Shenandoah, the folk tune that had first drawn Noah to her. The crowd hushed, drawn to the melody's river-like flow, its notes weaving a story of struggle and triumph. James joined them, his suit jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up in a rare show of ease. He sat beside Noah, who climbed onto his lap and attempted to sing along, his voice comically off-key but earnest. Noah giggled, tapping the piano in rhythm, his small hands syncing with Lena's. The trio's joy was infectious, the lobby's opulence softening into something human, something whole. Tasha Brooks, now a shift supervisor, leaned against a pillar, her braids swinging as she clapped along, her grin shouting, "That's my girl!" Dr. Miriam Patel, Noah's therapist, nodded from the crowd, her notebook filled with observations of Noah's growth, much of it thanks to Lena's intuitive care. The music paused as James stood, raising a glass. "To Lena Carter," he said, his voice carrying over the room. "She's not just a friend or a teacher, she's family. She showed us love doesn't need words, only listening." The crowd cheered, glasses clinking, and Lena's cheeks warmed, her eyes finding a framed photo on the wall behind him. It captured her, Noah, and James in the garden, laughing under the moon, with a caption, "Love speaks in silence." The image was a vow, a reminder of the family they'd forged through fire and truth. Lena rose, her blazer a far cry from the frayed smock of her past, and addressed the crowd. "This program," she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion, "is for every kid who feels invisible, every person told they're not enough. I was that person, scrubbing these floors, swallowing hate. But Noah, James, Tasha, they showed me I could sing a new song." She gestured to Noah, who signed love, and the